In this very lesson, we shall be looking at how to convert or express a number that has been written in the standard form as ordinary number. Remember, we are still on the real number system and we are looking at standard forms. In our previous lesson, we learned that the general format for writing a number in the standard form is given as a times 10 raised to the power n, where a is the decimal fraction. And then n can either be a positive or negative whole number. In converting or expressing a number that has been written in the standard form as ordinary number, our focus is going to be the power of the 10. That is this, our focus is going to be on the power of 10. A positive power of 10 tells us how many places we have to move the decimal point to the right. And then a negative power of 10 tells us how many places we have to move the decimal point to the left. So when you have a decimal number, so let's take it that this is our decimal number multiplied by a positive power of 10. This tells us that we have to move the decimal point to the right, and the number of movements is going to be based on the power. So when you have a decimal number also multiply a negative power of 10, then it tells us that we are going to move the decimal point to the left, and the number of movement is going to be based on the power. So in doing that, we have a list of numbers that has been written in the standard form. We are going to learn how to express this as an ordinary number. So we have our first example. So we have 3.27 times 10 raised to the power positive 5. Positive. So you can see that the power is what? Positive. And the positive power tells us that we have to move the decimal point to the right. It tells us how many places we have to move the decimal point to the right. So we have our number 3.27. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now our decimal point is here. And then after that, we fill each empty space or each gap with zeros. So we have 1 0, 2 zeros, and that. Then and now our number becomes 327000000. Our decimal point is here. You can decide to add 0. You know that this is the same as this. So this is our number for this very standard form. Let's look at the next example. So looking at this, we also have a positive power. And a positive power tells us how many places we have to move the decimal point to the right. So this, we have 4.25, and then it is a positive power, and it is 2. So we are going to move the decimal point 2 places to the right. So we are going to have 1, 2. So our decimal point is here. So our number becomes 425.0. And you know that 425.0 is the same as 425. And that is that. Let's look at the next example. With example C, we realize that the power is negative. The power is negative 4. And we have learned that a negative power tells us how many places we have to move the decimal point to the left. So we are going to have 0.23. Let me write it in the So we have 1.23 and we have a negative power. So it means we are going to move the decimal point to the left 4 times. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have our decimal point at this point. And then after that, we fill each empty space or gap with zeros. So we have 0.00012. So you can add 0 here. So this is the number for this very standard form. Let's look at the example D. So we have example D and realize that the power is negative. And we know that a negative power means that we have to move the decimal point to the left. So we have 1.1773. And because we have a negative power, we are going to move the decimal point 3 places to the left. So we have 1, 2, and then 3. So our decimal point is here. And then we fill each gap with 0. So we have 0, and then 0. And then in front of the decimal point, we have 0. So our number becomes 0.001173. And this is the number for this very standard form. Let's look at the last example and then we run out of here. Example E. We have 2.44 times 10 raised to the power negative 2 times 10 raised to the power 5. We are to write this as an ordinary number. So we know that a negative power means we have to move the decimal points to the left, and then a positive power tells us that we have to move the decimal point to the right. So let's start with the negative power. So we have 2.44 times 10 raised to the power negative 2. Let's start with this. After that, we move on to the power of 5. So a negative power tells us that we have to move the decimal point to the left 2 times, and it's based on the power. So we have 1, 2. So our point is here now, and then we fill each gap with zeros. So we have 0, and then in front of the point we have 0. So this number becomes 0.0244. Now let's continue with 10 power 5. And we know that a positive power tells us that we have to move the decimal point to the right. So we are going to get 0.0244. So we are going to move the decimal point 5 places to the right. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. So our decimal point is here. and then we fill each gap with 0. So we are going to get 0, 0, 2, 4, 4, and then 0. And we know that this is the same as 2, 4, 4, 0. And that is that. Now with this very same question, you can apply your indices. So we know that in applying indices, when two or more numbers are multiplied and then they have the same base, what do? We pick one of the base and then we add their exponent. So this is going to be 2.44 times 10. Indices, we have minus 2 plus what, 5. And this gives us 2.44 times 10 raised to the power what, 3. And then we can continue with that. We know that 10 raised to the power 3 is 4,000. We multiply it by that. So we can go by what we are doing. A positive power tells us that we have to move the decimal point 3 places to the right. So we have 1, 2, and then 3. So we fill each gap with 0. So our number becomes 2, 4, 4, and then 1. And this is the same as that. This brings us to the end of today's lesson. I'm going to write some tutorial set questions. Pause the video, we write them down, we try our hands on them. So these are the questions. See you tomorrow. Bye 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 bye.